The call came in just before noon on a Tuesday, and when I heard my daughter-in-law's voice shaking through the phone, I already knew. "What did you do to Lily's account?" she said. "Not hello. Not any of that. Just those words, tight and angry, like she had been rehearsing them." I set my coffee cup down on the counter very slowly. Outside my kitchen window, the maple tree in the backyard had just started turning orange. My husband used to love that tree in October. He said it was the most honest thing in nature, something that shows its colors without being asked. "I protected it," I said calmly. There was a silence on the other end. Then, "You had no right." 3 days earlier, my daughter-in-law had stood in my living room with her arms crossed and told me I was suffocating their family. She said I called too much. She said I gave too much advice. She said I treated my son like a child who could not make his own decisions. And then she said the one thing that stayed with me long after she left. She said, "That money is sitting in an account collecting dust while we are struggling." It makes no sense. I had not answered her that day. I simply watched her walk out my front door with my son trailing behind her, his eyes not quite meeting mine. And then, I sat in my chair for a long time. And then I picked up the phone and called Mr. Caldwell. But I should take you back. Because to understand what happened, you have to understand where it all started. My name is Helen. I am 63 years old. I retired 2 years ago after 31 years of teaching 4th grade at an elementary school outside Columbus, Ohio. I have short silver hair that I stopped fighting a long time ago, and I still keep a garden even though my knees complain about it every spring. My husband, Raymond, passed away 4 years ago from a heart condition we did not catch in time. He was 61. He was the kind of man who remembered every birthday in the family without writing it down. He coached Little League on weekends, even after his own son grew up. He made the best chili I have ever tasted, and he never once told anyone the recipe. Before Raymond passed, we sat together with Mr. Caldwell, our family attorney, and we set up a college fund for our granddaughter Lily. She was 5 years old then. She had just started violin lessons, and she was already better than children twice her age. Raymond cried a little during that meeting. He said he wanted to make sure Lily had every door open to her, even if he could not be there to open them himself. We put in everything we had saved over the years, careful, patient, unglamorous saving, the kind where you skip the vacation and fix the car instead of replacing it. The account was set up clearly. I was the sole trustee. Nothing moved without my written approval. My son knew this. My daughter-in-law knew this. Or I believed they did. My son and my daughter-in-law have been married for 6 years. When they first got together, I thought she was sharp and driven. She had big ideas, and she talked about them with a kind of energy that filled the room. But over the years, some of that energy started pointing in directions that made me uneasy. She jumped from one business idea to the next, importing candles, then reselling supplements, then something with essential oils that I never fully understood. My son supported each one. He believed in her. That is something I have always respected about him. He is loyal, but loyalty without caution is its own kind of danger. About 1.5 years ago, my daughter-in-law got involved with a company called ClearPath Solutions. She came to Sunday dinner one evening and spent most of it talking about the income potential. She had charts on her phone. She showed me testimonials from women who had apparently replaced their full salaries in 6 months. She said ClearPath was different from everything else. She said the product sold itself. I asked one question: what is the product? She explained something involving wellness subscriptions and a recruitment model. I recognized the structure immediately. I had seen it before, not personally, but in the stories that parents used to bring to me at school. A mother pulls her daughter out of the choir trip because she cannot afford the fee. A family sells the second car. I had seen what these schemes do to real households. I did not say any of that at dinner. I only nodded and changed the subject. But over the following months, I noticed things. My son stopped mentioning their plans for the beach house they always talked about renting. My daughter-in-law started asking me to watch Lily more often, which I loved, but the reasons felt strained. They missed 2 family dinners in a row. When I called my son, he sounded tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. Then, about 6 weeks before the phone call, she brought up Lily's college fund directly for the first time. We were standing in my kitchen after Lily's violin recital. Lily was in the living room with her father, still in her dress, eating the cookies I had made. My daughter-in-law leaned against the counter and said very casually, as if we were talking about the weather, Raymond would have wanted that money to help the family while we actually need it, not sit there until Lily is 18. I kept my hands busy washing a bowl. Raymond set it up specifically for Lily's education, I said. That was the whole point. Things change, she said. I did not argue. I finished washing the bowl. A few days later, I called Mr. Caldwell and asked him to flag any inquiry on the account and notify me before anything could proceed. He said, "Is there a concern?" I said, "There is a feeling." He said that was enough. 3 weeks after that, my daughter-in-law showed up at my house with the argument about interfering. My son stood near the door the whole time, not quite agreeing with her but not defending me either. She said I inserted myself into decisions that were not mine to make. She said I made comments about their finances that were not my business. She said I needed to step back and trust that they could manage their own household. And then she said that Lily's college fund was effectively doing nothing while they were barely staying above water. I told her calmly that the fund was not something I could touch without it being used correctly. She told me I was hiding behind legal paperwork. She told me that a loving grandmother would want to help her family when they were struggling. After they left, I sat very still for a long time. And then I called Mr. Caldwell again. I told him I wanted extra protection placed on the account. I told him that if anyone other than me made any kind of inquiry or attempted any kind of transaction, I wanted to be notified immediately, and I wanted everything locked. He asked if I was certain. I told him I had never been more certain of anything since Raymond passed. That was on a Friday. The call from my daughter-in-law came the following Tuesday. I let her finish saying what she needed to say. Then I told her that the account was protected and that nothing had been taken and nothing had been given away. She said I was making a choice between money and my own family. I told her I was making a choice for Lily. She hung up. My son called 20 minutes later. He was quieter than she had been, which was somehow harder to hear. "Mom," he said. "She's really upset." "I know," I said. "She just wanted to talk to Mr. Caldwell herself, just to understand the options." "There are no options," I said gently. "The account is for Lily's college. That is not a flexible arrangement." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "We are in a difficult place right now." I asked him how difficult. He said he would rather not talk about it over the phone. He came over that evening without my daughter-in-law. He sat at my kitchen table the same way he did as a teenager when something had gone wrong at school, with his hands folded and his eyes on the surface in front of him. I made tea, and I waited. He told me about ClearPath Solutions. He told me that my daughter-in-law had not just been selling the product, she had invested in it. She had paid to join at a higher tier that promised greater returns and more recruiting power. She had pulled from their savings account to do it. When the returns did not come the way the company had described, she had borrowed money to invest again, convinced it would turn around. "How much?" I asked. He looked at the table. "Between what she put in and what we borrowed," he said, "we're looking at close to $60,000. I kept my hands wrapped around my mug. "Who did you borrow from?" I asked. He said they had taken a personal loan from an online lender. He said the interest was high, and the repayment terms were getting hard to manage. He said they had been selling things quietly. Furniture, some electronics, trying to keep up without telling anyone. "And ClearPath?" I asked. He rubbed the back of his neck. "It's not looking good," he said. Some people in the group started talking. "There are complaints filed somewhere. Jessica in her upline disappeared 2 weeks ago." I set my mug down. "Marcus," I said, "are you telling me this company might be fraudulent?" He did not say yes, but he did not say no. That night after he left, I did not sleep well. I kept thinking about Lily at her recital, bow in hand, completely unaware that the money her grandfather had set aside for her future had been discussed in rooms she was never invited into. I kept thinking about Raymond and how carefully he had signed those papers. I kept thinking about what it would mean if that account had not been frozen, how easily it could have been emptied before I noticed. The next morning, I called a woman I had known for years, a friend named Patricia who worked in county records. I did not tell her everything. I only told her I was concerned about a company called ClearPath Solutions and asked if she knew anyone who could help me find out more. She called me back that afternoon. Her voice was careful in the way that tells you before the words do that what's coming is not good. She said ClearPath Solutions had been the subject of a formal complaint investigation in 3 states. She said the structure of the company matched what consumer protection agencies called a pyramid recruitment model, with product wrapping, meaning there was a product, but the real money came from recruiting, not selling. She said several investors who had paid for upper-tier positions had filed reports when their promised returns never materialized. Helen, she said, this is the kind of thing that collapses very suddenly. I thanked her and sat with that information for a while. 2 days later, my daughter-in-law came to my house. This time she did not come alone. She brought a woman she introduced as a family law consultant. The woman had a briefcase and a business card, and the kind of professional politeness that is designed to feel like a warning. They sat across from me at my dining room table. My daughter-in-law had clearly rehearsed what she was going to say. She explained that they were simply trying to understand the legal scope of the trust and whether there were any circumstances under which early release of funds was possible. The consultant added that in certain family hardship situations, trustees had been known to exercise flexibility. I looked at the consultant calmly. Mr. Caldwell is the attorney of record on this account, I said. You are welcome to contact his office. He will explain the terms. My daughter-in-law's composure slipped slightly. We are not asking for all of it, she said. Just enough to clear the loan and get back to zero. The account is not for getting back to zero, I said. This is our family, she said, and her voice cracked a little at the edges. We are drowning. I felt something then. Not the cold feeling of a confrontation, but something more complicated. Because I could hear that she was telling the truth. They were struggling. The desperation in her voice was real. And I also knew that what she was asking me to do would not save them. It would only delay the same collapse while costing Lily her future. I hear you, I said quietly, and I am not without sympathy. But I will not release that money. Not for this. The consultant began talking about documentation and legal standing. I excused myself to get a glass of water, and while I was in the kitchen, I called Mr. Caldwell and left a message telling him who was sitting at my table and asking him to send me written confirmation of the terms of the trust for my records. When I came back, my daughter-in-law looked at me with something that had moved past frustration into something rawer. You don't trust me, she said. I don't trust this situation, I answered. That is not the same thing. They left shortly after. I sat alone in my dining room for a long time afterward. That evening, I received a text message from an unknown number. It said, "You should reconsider. These things have a way of becoming everyone's business." I read it twice. Then I took a screenshot and forwarded it to Mr. Caldwell. He called me the next morning. "Helen," he said, "this has gone beyond a family disagreement. This is potential coercion. We need to document everything." I told him about Patricia's findings on ClearPath. He was quiet for a moment, and then he said something that I will not forget. He said, "You may have frozen that account just in time. If they had moved the money before the company was officially flagged and investigators started looking at connected accounts, that money could have been tied up in a legal freeze that had nothing to do with your intentions. I had not even thought of that." He said he was going to contact the State Consumer Protection Office with what I had. He said I should keep all communication records. He said I should not be alarmed, but he wanted me to be prepared for the possibility that this situation might become more formal before it became less. 2 nights later, my son came back. He came alone again, and this time he looked like a man who had not slept in several days. His shirt was wrinkled. He had not shaved. He sat at my kitchen table and he did not say anything for almost a full minute. Then he said, "The lender called the loan. They want full repayment in 30 days or they're filing for collections." I said, "All right." He looked up at me. "That's all you have to say? What do you want me to say, Marcus?" "I want you to help us," he said. His voice was not angry. It was exhausted. I looked at my son. I looked at the face that had come into the world and made me understand for the first time what it means to love something more than yourself. And I told him the truth. "I cannot help you with Lily's money," I said. "That is not mine to give. But I can help you think through what is actually available. I can sit with you and look at the real numbers. I can call someone I trust who does financial counseling and see if there is a way to work with the lender on a structured repayment. I can help you in every way that does not involve reaching into your daughter's future." He was quiet. "Did you know what you were investing in?" I asked. He shook his head slowly. "She showed me the projections," he said. "It looked real. The presentations looked like something a real company would put together. And when did you start to doubt it?" He thought for a moment. "About 4 months ago," he said. when the second round of returns never came and the explanation kept changing. "And you did not tell me then," I said. He looked at his hands. "She thought we could fix it ourselves," he said. "She did not want you to think we couldn't manage." That hurt me more than any of the rest of it, not because he had kept a secret, but because the secret was born out of the fear of my judgment. I had apparently made my son feel that coming to me with a failure was worse than drowning quietly. I reached across the table and put my hand over his. "You could have told me," I said. "We would have figured something out. Not from Lily's account, but something. I would not have made you feel small." He closed his eyes. "I know," he said. "I know that now." Over the next week, things moved quickly in the way that complicated situations do once they start to break open into daylight. The State Consumer Protection Office began a formal inquiry into ClearPath Solutions. Patricia sent me an article from a regional news outlet that named the company specifically in connection with a multi-state scheme that had affected hundreds of families. The article said investigators were examining the recruitment structure and the misrepresentation of returns. Mr. Caldwell called to tell me that several investors had already submitted documentation. He said my records, including the screenshot of the threatening text message, had been passed along to the appropriate office. My daughter-in-law called me 2 days after that. Her voice was different than it had ever been in all the years I had known her. There was no strategy in it, no performance, just a woman who had run out of angles. "Helen," she said, "I need to tell you something." I sat down. She told me that she had known for longer than she admitted that something was wrong with ClearPath. She said she had ignored the warning signs because she had already put so much in. She said she had believed that if she could just get Lily's college fund released and pay off the loan, she could bury the whole thing before anyone found out. She said she had never once stopped to think about what would happen to Lily if the plan failed. That last part was the hardest to hear. Not because it was cruel, but because it was honest. She had not been thinking about Lily at all. She had been thinking about herself, and about saving face, and about not being the woman who had made a catastrophic mistake. And in that blind panic, she had pointed herself at the one person in the family who could not defend her own interests. A 9-year-old with a violin and a future she had not yet imagined. "I'm not asking you to forgive me right now," my daughter-in-law said. "I just needed you to know that I understand what I did." I did not fill the silence immediately. I let it sit between us the way uncomfortable truths sometimes need to sit before they become something workable. Then I said, "I am glad you understand it." She asked, very quietly, what was going to happen now. I told her what Mr. Caldwell had told me, that my son and she had not committed fraud themselves, they had been defrauded. That cooperating fully with the investigation was the most important thing they could do right now, that the personal loan could be addressed through a structured repayment arrangement, that it would take time and discipline and humility, but it was survivable. "The college fund is untouched," I added. "Lily's future is exactly where Raymond put it." She started crying then. Not the tight, controlled kind of crying that is still about winning something. The kind that comes when relief and shame arrive at the same moment and there is no more energy left to keep them separate. The formal investigation into ClearPath Solutions concluded several months later. The founders of the company were charged. 3 officers of the organization received civil penalties. The lending company that had issued high-interest personal loans to investors was separately reviewed for predatory practices. My son and daughter-in-law were listed as victims, not participants. They were not charged with anything. There were consequences, of course. There always are. My son had to disclose the situation to his employer as part of a compliance review. He was not terminated, but he was removed from his project lead role for a period and required to complete a financial responsibility course through the company's HR program. It was humbling for him. He told me once that walking into that first session felt like being sent to the principal's office at 40 years old. I told him it meant he was paying attention this time. My daughter-in-law got a job. A real one, with a salary and hours and a manager who expected things of her. She told me she had forgotten what it felt like to earn something straightforwardly, without the language of passive income and unlimited potential. She said it was actually a relief. One Sunday in February, they came for dinner, all 3 of them. Lily arrived wearing the sweater I had given her for Christmas and immediately asked if she could play something for me before we ate. I said yes. She stood in my living room with her violin and played a piece she had been working on for weeks, her eyes focused, her posture careful, her face utterly serious in the way that children are when they are doing the thing they love most. When she finished, she looked up at me. "Grandma," Is the music jar still for me? That is what she had started calling it after I once tried to explain the college fund in terms a 7-year-old might understand. The music jar. I had told her it was like a jar that held music in it, waiting for her to be ready to use it. It is still yours, I said. Every penny. She nodded like this was simply the natural order of things, and went to set the table. My son watched her go, and then looked at me with an expression I recognized from when he was small. It was the look he used to have when he scraped his elbow and made it to me before he started crying. Relief that was also gratitude that was also a little embarrassed by its own need. She doesn't know any of this happened, he said quietly. Good, I said. She doesn't need to yet. My daughter-in-law was in the kitchen, and I heard the sound of her opening drawers and finding things without asking where they were. She had learned the kitchen well enough by now. She came to the doorway holding a serving spoon and looked at me. I used to think you froze that account to punish us, she said. To remind us that you were in charge. I know, I said. I was wrong, she said simply. You froze it because you were the only one in the room who was thinking about her. I did not rush to respond. I let her have the grace of saying it. I have been a grandmother longer than I was a mother, I said finally. You learn to see further ahead than the current emergency. She smiled at that. A real smile. Not the polished kind she used to wear. The kind that has been through something and come out smaller and more honest. We ate dinner together that evening, and Lily told us about a girl at school who had decided to take up violin after hearing Lily play at the winter concert. Lily said she was going to teach her some basics at recess. My son said that was a big responsibility. Lily said she knew, but someone had to do it. I looked at my granddaughter across the table, this girl who had no idea that for a period of several months, her future had been the subject of courtroom language and threatening text messages and late-night conversations at kitchen tables. And I thought about Raymond. I thought about the afternoon we sat in Mr. Caldwell's office and signed the paperwork, and Raymond had blinked fast to keep himself composed because he already knew then, somehow, that he was not going to be here long enough. He had said to me on the way home that day, "We can't protect her from everything, but we can make sure the floor doesn't disappear underneath her." I had thought I understood what he meant then. I understood it better now. The music jar is still full, and it will stay full, because the most loving thing I ever did for my family was not the thing that looked like giving, it was the thing that looked like refusing. And sometimes, the clearest act of love is the one that nobody thanks you for, until much later, if they thank you at all. But Lily played her violin for me that evening, and that was enough. That has always been enough.